Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart. It's also the name of the show. I always wonder what the people in the podcast feed after the fact think. Like when I do some of those really long, drawn out entrances, intros. I always wonder, like, do they just think I'm yelling for the sake of yelling? Those of you who are watching on YouTube, Facebook, and X, you could see that was some beautiful pantomiming on a Friday. Pantomiming Fridays here on the Russ Joy Show. We have a lot to get into today, and I'm very, very excited to see each and every one of you. Give yourselves a round of applause. I'm actually going to, let me raise the desk here for a second. We're going to keep going. I actually have a thought here for next week. I'm like rearranging stuff on my desk, and there's like a thing that I bought sometime last year that I've never set up, and I started tinkering with it today. And so you can see this thing. It's not that. It's this thing that's over here. You guys can't see it, but I have a feeling that it could end up being like useful to the show, but I have to like reorganize part of my desk to get there. So anyway, we're a good little bit away from further optimizing the show. Can we say optimize? Is that okay? Can we say that on the show on a Friday? I think we can. But it is a fun Friday. It is a day that we are certainly going to enjoy ourselves. And you know why? Because this week was perfectly fine. I have no qualms with this week. I have no beef with this week. But I will tell you, I'm glad that the week is effectively done. That is one thing I am pretty resolute in. I'm glad that the week is practically done. Next week, I travel up to the Great White North. I'll be up in Canada. How's this show going to work when I'm in Canada? I don't know. We'll find out, though. Well, I have an Ethernet port in my hotel room. I have no idea. I sure hope so. I hope the Canadian Wi-Fi is good if I don't. I thought about taking the show kind of on the road in Canada next week. Like, do I try to do an episode from a coffee shop? I'm taking my XLR stuff with me, though, because we all remember in Florida, I plugged in on the USB on the back, and instead of just spending like $7 for a USB wire that I could take with me, I figured, why do that? I'll just take extra equipment. It'll be totally fine. What could possibly go wrong? So we're going to do the show next week. I thought about, like, do I try to do it from, like, the TV tower or whatever in Toronto? That could be fun. Do I try to do that from, I don't actually know what there is in Toronto. I have no idea. So if you've been to Toronto before, by all means, you can let me know in the comments. You can shoot me a DM over on Twitter or over on Instagram, and I will happily take any suggestions, coffee shops, restaurants. I'm happy to get a little trip in here for work. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So next week, the show will be on the road. I have no idea what that means. Timing-wise, I have no idea what it means. The plan is to go live 3 times next week. When those shows will happen remains to be seen. And I do plan on having somebody hop on as a guest next week, probably on Wednesday is my guess. But the plan is to do 3 shows next week. We'll do them from up in Canada, and we're going to hope, and we're going to cross our fingers and our tootsie toes that I will actually have some good news there. So, there we go. Next week, Canada. Get ready. Get hype. Get that passport out. So, Greg Bondarenko actually asks a really good question. A live show from the Hockey Hall of Fame. So I'm going to be at an event at the Hockey Hall of Fame one night next week for the conference that I'm going to. And I was like, what? Can I finagle my way into the Hockey Hall of Fame sooner? And could I do some shenanigans at the Hockey Hall of Fame? And I don't think I can, but if I can, it's not the worst idea in the world.
Sarah, what are you doing? Why are you looking for an Ethernet wire?
Don't worry about it. We're trying to stream the Russ Joy Show here from the Hockey Hall of Fame. I don't think it's a good idea, though. Anyway, we'll see. Might happen. Jamie Rollo says, hey, Russ, everything okay with Snow the goalie? Haven't heard much lately. You guys aren't getting divorced from each other, are you? LOL. Yeah, Snow the goalie's no more. So I'm actually going to take this down. We disbanded the show. I was hoping that we would be able to address that on the show, but Ant and Bundy don't want to talk about it. So there is no more Snow the goalie. And I want to thank everybody for all your support over the years. I'm just kidding. We're back. It's fine. You guys have to remember, for better or worse, I do this show 3 days a week. It has no impact on doing Snow the goalie. Ant dropped a new episode of Phightin Words this morning with Big Bet Bob Wankel over on the Joy Media channel and on the Phightin Words channel. And Bundy is preparing for his daughter's wedding, which happens the same night as the NHL draft. So we're just kind of all over the place right now. And I talked about this, I think, earlier this week. Maybe it was late last week. We're trying to put some finishing touches on stuff with the Flyers, especially around the draft. But we also have like our deal with them, our partnership deal with them that we're trying to finalize. And so we're not really in a holding pattern, but we're in a ramp up, I think, starting next week. I would expect to snow the goalie next week. We've gone kind of back and forth on if we were going to do one this week, but we'll certainly have one next week. I will check in from Canada because what could possibly go wrong? Now, the funny thing would be if Bundy makes his trips every so often up to Canada. Maybe Bundy and I can do a show from, I don't think he's going to go. Why would he go to Canada a couple weeks before his daughter's wedding? I don't know. We'll find out. Brian Knowlton says, spoiler alert, live draft show from the dance floor. Nope. No. Well, I don't know. Bundy might actually check in on the show on draft night from his daughter's wedding. That I don't know. So, Greg Bondarenko says Flyers season puts Snow the goal in hibernation. Nah. We're good. Okay. I want to get into some of what's been going on. And I'm going to really quickly remember, I don't want to forget, comments now will be popping in the bottom right of your screen if you're on YouTube, Facebook, or X. As your comments come in, they will pop up on the screen. They'll pop up on the screen. You could scream if you see your name. Ah! No, look, I'm famous now. I was on a stream. I was on a show. Not really famous. Like, let's be realistic about the viewership numbers on the show from time to time. Well, I'm on the screen. So there you go. Video Guy Amadeo's the first one to have the thing pulled up. Oh, hold on. I don't think anybody's going to care about this. But there was some news that I'm very excited. Can I just take a second to share some news I'm very excited about that might be happening that I got really hyped about? And I will tell you that if it happens, I'm going to be over the moon giddy about. Let me see if I can find an account that doesn't look very creepy or weird. I don't know what this is. This account. Okay, we're going to go with this one. I've never heard of this account before, so we're just going to hope that they don't have any skeletons in their closet. But I saw this going around today. On a whim, I looked it up just to see if it was happening or not, because there was a rumor earlier in the year. But friends, Roman's countrymen, they're now talking about Halo going to PS5. And there's apparently some kind of a leaker who has had previous intel on other games moving from Xbox to PlayStation. And so this person came out and said a release could be imminent. There's high school me playing Halo 2 that's very excited. Middle school? Middle into high school? That seems about right. If I get to play Halo 2 or Halo 3 on PS5, I've already told my wife ahead of time. If Halo comes to PS5, she just won't have a husband for a little bit. I looked at my kids and I said, kids, you know how daddy said we're going to have a really nice summer? Like, yeah, we are going to have a nice summer. But by we, I mean you and mom. Because dad's going to be in the basement playing Halo. Russ, that doesn't seem like a really responsible thing to do at your age. I don't care. I've been waiting for years for Halo to move to PlayStation. I have not bought an Xbox since the 360. Halo on PS5. If you watch the show, if you listen to the show, you want to play, guess what? I'll be online. I'll be on. I'll play. Okay, anyway, that's it. That's all. I just wanted everybody to know, in case you missed it. Now, I want to get to a lot of stuff because we have updates from the Stanley Cup Final. We have updates from the NBA Finals. We have a Sixers update. Apparently, the Sixers potentially looking to move up in the draft instead of down. That is certainly interesting. We're going to get to that as well. Something that kind of isn't going to be a focal point of today's show, but we had other moves in the NHL. A trade that went down that does impact a Metropolitan Division rival. You have a guy who won 2 awards instead of the one that many expected him to win. And by the way, the captain of the U.S. men's national team, who we talked about a little bit on Wednesday's show, said some of the dumbest shit I think a U.S. captain has ever said. And we're going to get to that a little bit later on in the show. If you look at the description of the episode on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube or Facebook or X, you'll see it. Well, not on X, because I have to limit the characters, but you get it. Just a reminder, if you're on X, you have to click the video first, and then you can type your comment, and then I can pull it up here. So anyway, let's go out to the comments here really quick, and then we're going to get underway with the show today, because there is a lot to get into, my friends. Dear friends, Romans, countrymen, and Lemmyers. Oh, God! Breaking news. This is what happens. I am not allowed to have nice things. I swear I'm not allowed to have nice things, although we knew that this was going to happen. We have breaking news into the show. This is the beauty of doing the show right now. Mitch Marner. Oh boy. Wow. Mitch Marner, my friends. Andy Strickland. Andy Strickland, who is a well-known guy, Blues reporter. You can see here 58,000 followers. Certainly a newsbreaker at times. A guy who is very plugged in. Says, can confirm Mitch Marner will not be returning to Toronto. Will be playing for a new team come next season. Hashtag Leafs forever. This is not surprising. If you have been paying attention to anything that we've talked about on this show, it seemed highly unlikely that Mitch Marner was going to be brought back. You have to remember the background, the trade deadline, it was discussed that Marner may or may not have wanted an extension and that he maybe wanted to consider staying in Toronto, but around the trade deadline, his name was brought up in multiple trade conversations. There was a rumor out there that he turned down a deal or that he didn't want to move to the team that he was going to get traded to. This is ugly. So now if you're Toronto, you missed out on getting assets for a guy that many people expected was going to leave in the offseason. And instead of getting assets for Mitch Marner, who, by the way, he was part of the Rantanen discussions, at least at one point during the season. Obviously, Toronto did not get anybody of the Rantanen or even the Natchez level because they didn't get anybody. They kept Marner. It didn't work out. And now, according to Andy Strickland, he is out. I guess we can kind of parlay that with another bit of news because this was like another thing that it came across this morning. Dave Pignata of the Fourth Period is reporting that Sam Bennett is likely going to remain in Florida, and he says that it's an 8x8, an $8 million deal for 8 years. But now, at the same time, if we trust the same guy who just broke the Marner news, and we're going to come over here really quick, because now we have a back and forth between Dave Pignata and Andy Strickland. Let's go over here. Oh, I love the beef. I love the wars between media people. So, 8x8. Remember that not that long ago, the report was out there that Sam Bennett might get $10 million per year. Maybe Toronto is that team. Maybe there was another team, somebody flying under the radar. And it looks like he would take, in theory, if this were to go through, he would take $2 million less. There's no tax in Florida. Even though Gary Bettman says,
That's not the reason that players... Okay, sure. That's not a factor. Okay, sure.
So Andy Strickland quote tweets, it says, Florida and Sam Bennett haven't spoken in several weeks. No contract has been negotiated or agreed to between the player and the team. They're also in the middle of the Stanley Cup Final. Dave Pignata responds, correct. If you watched my segment, I said talks were put on the back burner for the playoffs. Still, given every indication he stays, but those talks will resume after the Stanley Cup Final, as I said on air. Now, in fairness, if you look at the aggregator account, NHL Rumor Report, they did say deal being discussed, pretty much locked in to stay in Florida. So it doesn't say that the deal's agreed to, but is it semantics? Whatever. So, all right, so catch everybody up. Mitch Marner out in Toronto. Where he lands, no one knows. Sam Bennett likely to re-sign with Florida. I would still expect a team like Toronto to try to go after him. I still think that there's a non-zero chance that John Tavares ends up hitting the open market, at which point Danny Briere and those Philadelphia Flyers should have a nice conversation with John Tavares if they can. If they could try to woo him on a short-term deal. I've been saying this for a while now. Probably doesn't happen, but maybe. You never know. You never know. K-Dub says, Flyers signing Ekblad? Unlikely, but I guess weirder things have happened. Zacho says, oh, yes. We have Greg Bondarenko saying hockey may be coming back to Atlanta. I saw that. There's a whole development plan in the area around Atlanta, and apparently got approved. It's like a multi-billion-dollar development effort to try to convince the NHL that there will be a new arena and that bringing a team to Atlanta again for some reason is going to work this time, even though it ain't happening. K-Dub also says, can't imagine paying Marner like $15 million a year. Brian Knowlton says that Pignata is saying it's likely Carolina will make Marner an offer of $14 million plus for 7 years. No. Listen, Mitch Marner, good player. Perfectly fine player. That ain't it. That ain't it. Mitch Marner for $14 million. Good luck. God bless. If you don't believe in God, then tree bless. There is no scenario on this planet where Mitch Marner's worth $14 million a year. And if a team is stupid enough to pay him that, good luck. Good luck, sport. Good luck. No updates on the Jason Robertson front, by the way, since Wednesday's show. So we all just kind of sit back and wonder if anything's going to happen there. All right, now, I am going to get back into the comments here, and then we're going to move on with everything that's actually on the docket for today's show. We're 16 minutes in. We're slightly off the rails, but we're at least like relatively tangentially on what I wanted to get to today. Mr. Bone99 says, I watched the entire Stanley Cup game on my VR. Was it good? Do they have you like ice? I need to know more about like the VR experience. Was that like through YouTube TV? Does it have you at ice level? Are you up at like press row? I need to know. I have lots of questions. And Mr. Bone says, probably one of the best hockey games in recent memory. I have to tell you. I tweeted last night after I tell you that when I make a mistake or when I'm wrong, that I'm going to tell you that I was wrong. Thankfully, I do get to wrap myself in a little bit of a blanket of something that I was at least somewhat right about. But I did tweet last night that I thought it was over for Edmonton. Because remember, it was a 3-0 deficit that the Oilers faced in the first period of the game last night. And I did genuinely think that Edmonton looked dead. And so I thought, all right, well, it's time to start reading the last rites to Edmonton. And in fairness, they came back in that game. They took a lead. Florida scores with, 18 seconds left in the third period. Sensational goal from a tough angle. You go to overtime, and Leon Draisaitl scores the game winner. So Edmonton technically still alive. They level the series of 2 games apiece. They have home ice advantage, so 2 of the next 3 games, if it makes it that far, will be played in Edmonton. I still think Florida is going to win. But I did a thing that I sometimes do. I went back, I found a clip of my show, I found a clip of this here show, of this here program, and I said to myself, what if you took a quasi-victory lap on what you said on a show, I think it was last week. It was after game 1. It was after Edmonton took the lead in the series at 1-0. And I said at the time that I thought it was very likely that we were going to end up seeing Stuart Skinner get pulled and that it was going to be bad news bears for the Oilers. So, okay, really quick, let's recap where I was about a week or so ago after game 1, just ahead of puck drop, a few hours ahead of puck drop of game 2. All right, let's bring my ugly mug. Oh, my hair was longer there. I saw somebody ask in the comments, did I get a haircut? I got multiple hairs cut. All right. All right, what did I try to take a victory lap on? Listen, I said to you guys, I said it here and I said it on Snow the Goalie. I don't think that Skinner is as good as he's played this postseason. And that's correct. Still think that there is a non-zero chance that by game 3 or 4 of this Stanley Cup Final, Skinner gets pulled. He got pulled in both games! I would not be surprised. I am not a big believer in Edmonton. I'm still not. Now listen, it did look bad, admittedly, and I quote tweeted myself and I put a reply to myself that I was incorrect and Edmonton showed heart and they came back and they tied the series. I still don't think Edmonton's going to win the series. I really don't. And now Edmonton is exactly where I thought they would be from a goaltending perspective. You have to rely on Cal Pickard. And here's the problem. If you are an Oilers fan, are you going to really trot out your backup goalie for game 5? Or are you going to go back to Skinner? Because after Skinner got pulled in game 3, I was like, well, they're probably going to go back to Skinner at least one more time. And they did. And then Skinner gets pulled in, what was it, the second period last night. Not great. Not great, Cotton. So here's the problem that Edmonton has. You're probably going to have to rely on a backup. And that doesn't portend good things for your team. Now, ultimately, if Edmonton somehow pulls out 2 of the next 3, they win the Stanley Cup, they bring the cup back to Canada for the first time in a very, very long time, then cool. Good on them. But there's just part of me that thinks to myself, there's a reason that backup goalies are backup goalies. And I think they're screwed. They had a really nice come-from-behind win last night. Can't take it away from them. They took a late lead. They blew that late lead, and they still managed to skate away with the win on Florida's ice. However, I do think that you're going to have a very hard time putting up 5 on Bobrovsky again. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Bobrovsky goes out in Edmonton in Game 5 and he shuts that shit down and shuts it down fast. So I fully expect that Bobrovsky is going to, on his own, win at least one more game in this series. And then it's a matter of, can the Panthers score enough goals? Well, we saw what happened in Game 3. Yes, they can score enough goals. They certainly can. They can bust this thing open. And the fact that they've been able to exploit a starter that, again, I just don't think Skinner was going to be as good in the Stanley Cup Final as he was in the playoffs leading up to it, I still would not put my money behind Edmonton. So you've got that. Let me see. Was there... And AJ's right here. That the backup, he's 7-0. And I should just call him the backup because saying his name makes me sad. Because sometimes I want to call him Pickard and sometimes I want to call him Picard. But here's what I do know. He played for the Flyers for a very brief time, and he was Garbaggio. So now seeing him in the Stanley Cup Final makes my heart sad. Not like he would have been good here, but it's still kind of crazy. But he's 7-0 this postseason. I just don't think that it's going to ultimately matter. I would not want to trust my backup goalie in what is now a best-of-3 series. I just wouldn't. Brian Olsen says, Swiss cheese in Philly, but he somehow reinvents his game. Ooh. Amadeus says, big dick pick. That's actually not a bad name. Zach O says, Russ can stop being a teacher, but he'll never lose the teacher jokes. That is correct. K-Dub says, Edmonton still has McDavid and Draisaitl. If they go absolutely nuts, there's no reason they can't win 2 of the next 3. I think that it comes down to overall talent. Do they have the 2 most talented players in the series? Like, can anybody argue right now that there are 2 players on the ice that are more talented on Florida, right, that are more talented than McDavid and Draisaitl? I don't think you can make that case. But it's always come down, to me at least, it always comes down to your overall depth and which team is ultimately better. Katie says, your belief in the Oilers matches my belief in your mustache. So that means that you don't believe in my mustache. That's hurtful. That hurts. That wounds me tremendously. I'm going to go cry in a corner now. While I'm at the Snap household there, we know that AJ is a resident Rangers fan. And I guess now is like an okay time to also bring up the fact that the Rangers completed one of the weirdest trades that you're probably going to see this calendar year in the NHL. Chris Kreider gets dealt from the Rangers to the Ducks. The rest of it doesn't matter. Like, honestly, the rest of the trade doesn't matter. Chris Kreider gets dealt. Chris Kreider and his money get dealt from the Rangers to the Ducks, and the Rangers now are free of a cap hit, and a couple of national people just happen to point out the fact that with Kreider's money off the books, it now frees the Rangers up to go after free agents. Could Mitch Marner be heading to the Rangers? Wouldn't that be something? What if little Mitchy Marner goes to the Rangers, puts on a blue sweater? Would Mitch Marner want to play in New York? Could he handle New York? I don't know. Sam Bennett to New York? I don't know. So Kreider moves out to Anaheim, who, by the way, I don't know exactly what it is they think they're doing. Is the idea here to just add a veteran to a very young team? Maybe that's the idea. It's a weird trade. Really weird move. I thought that the Rangers were going to have to retain at least 30% of his salary. Nope. His money's totally off the books. The Ducks, for whatever reason, saved the day. Now, it's funny because Rangers fans, the unhinged ones, the ones that are very far away from reality, they thought that a Zegras was going to be coming back in a Kreider deal, which is bananagrams. Insane. Lunacy. So you see a Metropolitan Division team now sending out a guy who's been very important to that Rangers team and who's kind of viewed as a fixture of that team. You see that guy get dealt across the country and freeing up cap space, and then it starts to make you wonder, are they seeing something that the Flyers aren't? Or do they see the Flyers clearing their own cap space, and you're looking at the Metropolitan Division itself right now, and are the Rangers saying, you know what, we can drive the price up on a team like the Flyers? Or if it's going to be an offer sheet, are they going to get the rumor mill spinning and maybe try to drive the price up even higher on, say, the Flyers if they decide to offer sheet a guy? Who knows? I think that for the Rangers, ultimately, it's a very good move. I think having that flexibility is more important than having Kreider. Once again, I still don't know what the Ducks were thinking. I don't get it. I don't understand. Video guy Amadeo says, I still don't get how the Rangers are not taking on any salary from Trouba or Kreider. And he also says, and then there's the Penguins who are clearly tanking for McKenna. Well, if you didn't see it the other day, they're talking about Lemieux trying to buy back the Penguins as part of a group. And if Lemieux gets to buy back the Penguins, you can pretty much guarantee that Gavin McKenna is going to end up in Pittsburgh. So, an ugly situation that we know it could happen. It's not great. It's not great. Not great at all. Okay. Back out to the show's off. I don't even know what we should call it today. The show's all over the place. Although we did get to some of the stuff. Andrew asks, haircut. Yes. Though I haven't figured out how to style it yet. It is shorter than it was. It's getting kind of long. It's still long, but it's not as long as it was before.
That's what she said.
What? Who said that? Let's see. Greg Bondarenko says, your show in Canada can't be any worse than it was in Florida. Tower is awesome. Yeah, that's true. Let's see. Oh, I must have done the voice again. The Edith Bunker voice. I didn't even mean to.
Those were the days.
Greg Bondarenko says, looking forward to being in Pennsylvania, making an appearance at the draft party. Well, if you go to Pennsylvania, you're not going to find the draft party. It's in Atlantic City. So, Greg, just be really careful. If you're coming to Pennsylvania for the draft party, the Flyers draft party at least, you can be in the wrong state. Got to go to Atlantic City. Let's see. Fawcett says, more importantly, there will be a Spaceballs 2. I didn't even see the trailer. I saw it pop up in my feed, and I haven't watched it yet. I haven't seen Spaceballs, the original. I know. You can boo me. It's okay. I know. Let's see. I mentioned the Sixers earlier, and Amadeo goes and kind of airs out some dirty laundry that I didn't want Morey on the thumbnail. I don't. I don't want Morey on the thumbnail. I'd rather just about anything else. Not Daryl Morey. I don't want him here. I don't want him on. No. Greg also asks a really important question from the Stanley Cup Final. How many times were Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce shown on the screen? Too many. Far too many times. It felt like watching an old Chiefs game when they would just keep cutting to T-Swift. I don't need that. I don't care. No. Just go away. I don't care. I don't want Travis Kelce and T-Swift on my TV. Does that make me an old man? Maybe. Fawcett boos them. Okay. I want to get to the Sixers because I think that's an important little tidbit that we've now seen over the last day or so. Got reported yesterday by Michael Scotto that the Sixers have perhaps had some conversations with the San Antonio Spurs about moving up to number 2 in the draft. So he reports, sources, Sixers have engaged with the Spurs about potentially moving up to the number 2 pick. For now, the Sixers have zeroed in on 4 NBA draft prospects with the number 3 pick, including a private workout last week with VJ Edgecombe and Ace Bailey visiting Philadelphia next week. And there was also reporting earlier this week that for the Edgecombe workout, they brought Tyrese Maxey in, which is interesting. I don't know what to make of it other than the fact that they very clearly view Tyrese Maxey as a long-term foundational piece. They're giving him a max, all that. So they view him important enough to the long-term future of the team that they want to have him potentially meeting with potential draft picks, which is cool. The number 2 pick thing is interesting, though, because if you follow the NBA at all, we got the balloons. If we follow the NBA at all, what we do know is that Cooper Flagg is the consensus number 1 pick. There's no doubt. Dylan Harper, who played at Rutgers, is viewed as the consensus number 2 pick. And then everything gets kind of helter-skelter at number 3. That's the place that no one really knows what to make of anything. So you get guys like Edgecombe, Ace Bailey. There have been others that have been floated, but to me it has to be one of those 2 There has also been talk about the Sixers maybe moving down to 6 or moving down to 7 if they're not totally of the belief that whoever they would get at number 3 won't be there at like 5. Maybe they'll look to move down, or they think that the disparity between an Ace Bailey or an Edgecombe to like Knippel, for example, like if they think that that gap isn't that big, maybe they could pick up another asset. I don't know what that looks like. The fact that you got lottery luck and you now have the number 3 pick, to me, like you make the pick. And I saw a thing going around today, and I thought about bringing it up on the show, and then I realized I was going to get angry, and I didn't want to get angry. It's Friday. I don't want to get angry on a Friday. I want to be happy on a Friday, right? But I saw a thing going around, and it was from WIP's midday show today, and I saw Joe Giglio say that if it were up to him, if in order to move up from 3 to 2, you had to include a player, and your choices were trade Tyrese Maxey or trade Jared McCain, Giglio said he would trade Maxey. And then I sat back, and after I got done screaming until my eyes started to bleed, and my head popped off my body and ran away, I thought about it, and I was like, is it a crazy point? Is it insane to think that the Sixers would be better off trading Tyrese Maxey with the number 3 pick to go up and get Dylan Harper versus trading Jared McCain and number 3 to move? And I remember that, like, McCain had a really strong start to the season, really strong. He looked like he could have potentially won the Rookie of the Year this year, which is cool. But trading Tyrese Maxey over McCain? So the idea, I guess, would be to have a backcourt that would include McCain and Harper, and Maxey would go to San Antonio, where they already have Castle and De'Aaron Fox. Why would you do that if you're San Antonio? Why wouldn't you just draft Harper instead? And if the other idea is trade McCain along with number 3, again, why pick up another guard when you could just draft Harper? Like, what? So I thought about it. And again, once I got done screaming, I thought to myself, would you trade Tyrese Maxey over Jared McCain? Is there a logical way or a logical reason to do it? The only reason that you would do it is because you owe Tyrese Maxey a lot of money now. But you've also very clearly stated to the entire league and your team and your fan base that Tyrese Maxey is long-term the face of the franchise. Joel Embiid may still be your best player when he's healthy, which is almost never. He may be your franchise centerpiece, at least in the short term, if he can be healthy, which he never is. But that Tyrese Maxey is this long-term, we're going to build around him and make sure that we're building a team probably that even fits Maxey better than it fits Embiid, because you expect a decade or so out of Maxey, whereas with Embiid, you hope you get 2 to 3 more really, really, really good years, which are also not guaranteed because he can't stay healthy. Oh, and by the way, you still have Paul George, who you claim you're not going to try to trade, who also cannot stay healthy. The idea of trading Maxey to me is insane, unless for some reason you're like, we are so screwed cap-wise because you're tied to 2 injured guys in Embiid and Paul George, and you think to yourself, the only way for us to dig out of this hole would be to move Maxey's massive contract, but we can't do that. I'm sorry, Tyrese Maxey is the only reason to watch the Sixers. He's the only consistent reason that most people watched the Sixers at all last year. The idea of moving Tyrese Maxey just to move up one spot in the NBA draft makes no sense to me. Now, could we argue that Dylan Harper is a significantly more NBA-ready prospect and ultimately has a higher ceiling than both Edgecombe and Bailey? Yeah, probably. The one thing that flips everything on its head is, like, Ace Bailey is certainly viewed as a guy who, like, if everything were to break 100%, right, break the greatest way possible for him in his career, you're talking about a guy who, like, by the end of his career, you would hope is going to be compared to a lesser version of Kevin Durant. The same way that, like, when Brandon Ingram was coming out in the draft, people looked at him, they looked at his frame, they looked at the size, the length, all of it, and they said, Brandon Ingram isn't going to be Kevin Durant, but he's a similar comp. If he can be 75% of what Kevin Durant is, you'll be thrilled, right? Which is why there was that conversation late about the number 1 versus number 2 overall pick between Ben Simmons, who wouldn't shoot the ball, Brandon Ingram, who would. There were some people who fell in love with Ingram's size and length again. could you make a case that if Ace Bailey hits every checkpoint, every milestone along the way, that he could eventually become 60, 70% of Kevin Durant? I don't know. I didn't watch enough Ace Bailey to know. I wouldn't stake my professional reputation on it. But if you truly believe that the gap between Harper and Bailey isn't that big, or that Edgecombe is a more NBA-ready player and is a better fit than Harper would be, then okay. But if, like, it all, to me, again, it comes back to, like, San Antonio doesn't need another guard. So what do you have to offer the Spurs that would actually catch their interest, right? Because you're not going to just, like, trade number 3 and, like, a couple of other picks that are far down the line just to move up. Like, that wouldn't make a lot of sense. They have to want a player. Who's that player that the Sixers have? I don't see anybody that moves the needle enough. It'd probably have to be McCain or a Maxey. Now, if somebody can lobotomize the Spurs, maybe you can convince the Spurs that a really solid all-around wing like Paul George could be worth it. There's no chance. No chance at all. So, there's your NBA draft update. We're not that far away. I mean, in fairness, like, the NBA draft and the NHL draft are coming up really soon, which means that at least a lot of the speculation is going to be done soon. NBA draft is the 25th, and the NHL draft is like, is it the 27th? Let's look. I think it's around the 27th, right? I think. I hope. I don't actually know. I think it's the 27th. It's late in the month. That's all that matters. Those drafts are coming up. And once those drafts are done, then we're going to be in a really interesting spot. Yeah, the 27th and 28th. Then we're going to be in a really interesting spot because we're going to be talking about the fact that the Sixers and the Flyers will have likely made their respective picks, probably at number 3 for the Sixers and number 6 for the Flyers, unless there's a little bit of movement. Can the Sixers get from 3 to 2? Will it matter? Will the Flyers trade up to 4? Will that matter? Will they trade up from 22 to catch a dropping Roger McQueen, as I keep hoping? I'm going to keep manifesting it. By that Saturday, that Sunday, we're going to have a much better idea of what the youth of these teams is going to look like. And that's an exciting thing. And then you start talking about free agency. It won't matter for the Sixers, but it could for the Flyers. So we're like a couple weeks away from things getting really crazy, really chaotic, and a lot of fun. And especially on this show, we are going to have a lot of fun around the NBA and NHL draft. There are going to be a lot of shows. There's going to be a lot of content. And I can imagine having a bunch of guests on to kind of do a much better job of, explaining these things. JH says, watch the move Maxey and I think, so that's supposed to be, so it's Maury, but it says Morani, saying he's a moron. Watch the move Maxey, and Morani still has a job. I don't know if ownership would sign off on a trade of Maxey. I really don't. Andrew Fawcett says Embiid is maybe your best player for the 15 of the 25 games he suits up for. Zach O says, I'm not saying they need to go big game hunting, but this offseason is critical for the Flyers. Got to make some steps if you want to maintain buy-in from the fans. Says, obviously, we'll wait next year for McDavid. Here's the thing. If McDavid loses, so say I'm right and the Panthers take down the Oilers again, back-to-back seasons in the Stanley Cup Final, does that make him more or less likely to leave Edmonton this offseason or next offseason? I don't know. There's part of me that thinks there's a little bit of a loyalty, a little bit of a feeling like he didn't get the job done and he needs to deliver. So if you do want to see him move on to a team other than Edmonton, maybe you should quietly hope that the Oilers win, but I'm not convinced that's the way to go. Like, I'm actually feeling pretty confident that if he loses and then next year, they're not going to get to a third straight Stanley Cup Final, you would think. Do they flame out earlier next postseason? And that's kind of like we gave it our all, but it ain't happening here. I don't know. Zach also asks, what if they try to run it back with Skinner for a third time? Would he leave then? I mean, they need to get better. They need to get better in net. I guess there's a question there, too, of like, if Carter Hart gets cleared from the investigation, from the trial that is still ongoing, I think it's wrapping up soon. If he gets cleared, I think he's from there, right? Could there be a path to him trying to get a new start? Could an Edmonton be interested in him? I'm not exactly sure that he's better than Skinner. I was never really high on the guy in the first place, but like, does he represent an intriguing possibility, even though he hasn't played in the league, and at that point it'll be about 2 years? I don't know. I don't know. I think it'd be really strange. Be a weird choice. JH says if Edmonton messes it up again, then McDavid gets frustrated and wants to move. Enter McDavid on the Flyers. Amadeo says if they have no idea how to address a goalie, then McDavid leaves. I mean, it's possible. JH also says we're one of the few teams that can pay him or even overpay him. And McDavid, I don't think there can be an overpay. $20 million plus a year. I don't actually know what the salary cap allows you to go to, what the CBA allows you to go to. But I'd have to imagine that McDavid, if Marner's going to get $14 million a year, right? We started the show talking about how that idea is out there that Marner could get $14 million. If he's going to get 14, then McDavid is easily worth 20 plus. Has to be. Like, is there such thing as an overpay to get the best player in the game at peak powers? I don't know. I'm thinking probably not. And Amadeo says he'll probably surpass $20 million per year. It's possible. I don't know. Greg Monterega says if Eichel, who was picked number 2, wins the Stanley Cup before McDavid, I am sure McDavid could look to move to win a cup elsewhere. That's possible. Okay, now, I'm making sure that I didn't miss... Oh, I missed one thing really quick. So I said to you guys at the start of the NBA Finals that like I thought that Oklahoma City could be a buzzsaw. I don't know what's going on. I did say that the Pacers are a scrappy team and that maybe they could pull 1, maybe 2 wins out of it. I am surprised that OKC's had the trouble they have had with the Pacers. I think Oklahoma City is going to tie it up tonight. I think that we're going to have a tied series going into the weekend. I think Oklahoma City is just too good. There is a scrappiness. There's a resiliency to the Pacers that I knew was there, but I didn't think was going to be able to like neutralize the talent. We used to have a phrase when I used to coach soccer, and it was hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. And the hard work of Indy is certainly keeping them in games and has certainly led the way to them picking up 2 of the first 3 wins in the series. I'm not saying that it's a lack of want or a lack of desire, but there have been times that Oklahoma City has just looked outmatched, outworked, out-hustled. And I have to imagine that if you get to the pinnacle or very close to it, like you practically have a finger on the Larry O'Brien trophy. Like when you're that close, I have to imagine that like mentally you're locked in, but they've made a bunch of really, really strange decisions in games, including like TJ McConnell being able to get multiple steals either directly off the inbound pass or right after the inbound pass and a guy goes to dribble and he like just rips the ball away. That can't happen. So there's almost like a complacency with OKC that I didn't expect. We'll see how they react. Mike Tyson, there's that quote that he always gets attributed to him, but it's kind of a misquote. But the misquote is something to the effect of
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah. We'll see how Oklahoma City does. Can they bounce back? I don't know. All right, so we talked about the NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Final. Little update on the Sixers, potential trade. And that brings us to the last point. And it's a follow-up to Wednesday. And this is a point that I think is really, really important because I said to you guys on Wednesday, I found the discourse around Christian Pulisic not suiting up, not joining the U.S. men's national team for the Gold Cup looked really bad. And the explanation that he needed a break wasn't exactly ideal. And then I showed you guys a couple of clips of Alexi Lawless, and we were talking about Alexi Lawless's thoughts on taking a break, if that's warranted now. And there have been comparisons to what, like Cristiano Ronaldo did in the Nations League, where he goes and he helps Portugal win at 40 years of age, and how much it meant to him. He's crying on the field, all that. So in the days that have followed, there's been a lot of blowback on Christian Pulisic. I'm going to drop the comments back over here. There's been a lot of comments about Christian Pulisic and whether or not he's like a quitter or whether or not he's being a diva. And so there was a little bit of follow-up. And there were 2 guys, and we're going to kind of tie all of this together. two guys that had a lot to say about Christian Pulisic's decision not to go to the Gold Cup, because first I'm going to play what Pulisic had to say, because he said something that I think he thought was going to help and was going to somehow be damage control, and it made things in my mind significantly worse. So, to recap, the U.S. has 2 friendlies, and then they play in the Gold Cup, and you're a year out from the World Cup. And I don't think that many people outside of like real soccer fans, like absolute soccer fans, care about the Gold Cup. But when you're a year out from the World Cup being in the U.S., you probably want to put a good foot forward, right? And you want to win the Gold Cup. But Pulisic, who had been kind of said among national media pundits, chose not to go to the Gold Cup, presumably chose not to play in those friendlies. He went on to a show, I think it was Golazo for CBS, or it was something like that, or they're the ones who had the clip going around. But Pulisic addressed the rumors that he didn't want to go to the Gold Cup or the friendlies leading up to it. And in trying to do damage control, I think he did significantly more harm than good. Let's check in with Christian Pulisic on whether or not he wanted to play in the Gold Cup in these friendlies.
After that, what led to this decision to sit out this window and not participate with the national team?
Yeah, so obviously it sucks for me to miss out with the team. I want to be a part of the team always. But to be honest,
okay, well that's I guess one bit that you want to hear. He wants to be part of the team. Okay.
And towards the second half and towards the end of the season, yeah, my body just started talking to me and my mind, and then I started to think what is best and what is going to be best for me leading into next year and going into the World Cup.
Okay, so this sounds like fatigue. This sounds like his body felt like it was breaking down, and that giving himself a break at the end of a very competitive Serie A season, the most important thing was getting his body right, getting his mind right. And then he says, thinking about next year, what's the best thing? Now, keep in mind, we have to be kind of fair here across the board. Last summer, when we were talking about like Joel Embiid going to play for the U.S. in the Olympics, we were like, oh, that might not be a great idea, because Joel Embiid kind of has this problem where, his body breaks down, and so maybe him getting all those extra practices, it's not going to work. And then it didn't work, and it actually made things worse, or at least it seems like it made things worse. And so that is certainly not ideal. So we do have this like little bit of history here where we look at the Olympics in basketball and we say that could ultimately not work out well for a player. You can even go back to the winter when the Four Nations was happening, and there were a lot of NHL fans that were worried about the health of their team's players, because the idea was the rest of the league is going to get to take a break. They're going to get to catch their breath. And then you're going to have a bunch of guys going out and playing for a championship that really doesn't have any history and probably doesn't mean anything. So we had the Olympics, we had the Four Nations, and now we have these friendlies and then the Gold Cup. And so you have the captain of the team saying, I decided based on how my body felt that this wasn't a good thing for my body or for my mind. Okay, so we're going to go back to it. Try to make sense of it, fella.
And was that to play 8 more games and then get no rest at all, go straight into preseason and then grind another year and go straight into the World Cup? That's not what I...
So 8 games. So playing 8 more games and then going into preseason and then playing a club season for AC Milan or wherever he ends up, because AC Milan's selling off players and maybe he won't be there next year. And then having to play a World Cup. So he viewed this as this break is necessary because he knows what he's going to have to commit to. Okay.
What I felt was best for my body. But the only point that I would make with that is that I did want to be a part of at least the 2 friendlies. I did speak with the coaches and I asked, and I wanted to be a part of the team in whatever capacity I could. And they said no. They said they only wanted 1 roster, and that's coach's decision. I fully respect that. I didn't understand it, but it is what it is. I wanted to be
He's trying to make things better, and he just made them a lot worse.
part of that. But yeah, that's just the way things went, and I had to make the best decision for myself, and also, in the long run for my...
Okay, we're gonna just pause for a second, because I'm honestly trying to make sense of what I just heard. So Christian Pulisic had the opportunity to play in 2 friendlies and then the Gold Cup. He's not doing any of them. The national media was of the belief that he could have played in these friendlies and then maybe skipped the Gold Cup, or maybe he could have skipped the friendlies and played the Gold Cup. He decided that, you know what, if I were to play, I'd play the 2 friendlies, which are against better competition. I'm going to play the 2 friendlies and then skip the Gold Cup. Be with the team in those friendlies, and then not play in the Gold Cup. Again, Gold Cup, I usually don't care about, but it is a year out from the World Cup, and it probably does matter. Or it should. Or it can maybe drum up interest and excitement around this team. Feels kind of like a disaster right now. Okay. He says, nay, it's not that I didn't want to play in the friendlies. I wanted to play in the friendlies, but not the Gold Cup. And then the coach, the manager, Mauricio Pochettino, said, nay, you play in all or you play in none. And he says, I respect it, but I didn't really understand it. What's there not to understand? What is there not? What's hard to understand? If you're going to be part of the camp, if you're going to be part of the team, if you're the captain of the team, if you're the guy who's going to be the face of the U.S. men's national team from now for the next year in the build-up to the World Cup in the U.S. in 2026, it's not very complicated. You play. You help your team, this team that jettisoned finally their coach into the sun and brought in a guy who, while not a universally loved and heralded hire, was certainly viewed as a very good hire, a potentially transformational hire for a U.S. men's national team that's desperately needed one. You have the opportunity to represent your country in these 2 friendlies and then in the Gold Cup and hopefully lead that team and get things moving in the right direction. You chose not to do that. And then you want to say, well, I would have played in the 2 friendlies, but the coach didn't want me to, and I respect it, but I didn't understand it. What's there not to understand? Who gives a shit about the friendlies, fella? That's not the point. The point is to make sure that you are around for when the games matter. And whether you want to agree or not, like the Gold Cup at least sort of matters. Again, for the hype, a year out of the World Cup, the Gold Cup kind of matters. And you're not there. And yeah, you're not allowed to then play in the 2 friendlies. And then your team got boat raced 4-0 by Switzerland. And if we're being fair here, it doesn't exactly look like the U.S. men's national team is going to be sensational in this Gold Cup, because not only do you have Pulisic choosing to opt out of the Gold Cup and vis-a-vis also those friendlies, but you have a few other guys that are going to be playing in the Club World Cup, which in fairness is still playing. Right? It's still playing through the summer, and it's representing their club teams, and that'll still be exciting for the fans that choose to go to the Club World Cup, and you're still going to see a lot of the best playing in those games, but those guys also chose not to represent the U.S. They're representing their club teams. I don't really have beef with those guys, like the Weston McKinneys of the world. I don't have beef with those guys, but Pulisic wouldn't play in the Club World Cup. Like, this really is a choice to take the next few months off. To take the next few weeks at the very least off. And then he goes on to say in that clip that he's going to be working on his body, he's going to be working on training, all that stuff. I have a really hard time with it. Your captain has to be there. Your captain has to play. And your captain certainly shouldn't be somebody who's saying, well, I would play in these 2 meaningless games, but I really do think that the break is more beneficial than being with my team, with my nation at the Gold Cup. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that at all. Now, I'm just some jamoke. But there are 2 guys who are very well respected or have been well respected in the past, who represented their country and also played at some very good club teams in their careers. And I want to go over to one of them, a guy who is largely beloved among the U.S. soccer community for a very long time, Tim Howard, because if we keep building off of what we've learned here about Christian Pulisic and his decision not to play in the Gold Cup, the last thing that you want to be is soft. The last thing you want to be considered is soft. And unfortunately, as you're about to hear, there may be a little bit of softness going on with Pulisic. Let's go out to Tim Howard and hear what he had to say about Pulisic and, more importantly, Pulisic's dad.
We have to address Christian Pulisic's father, Mark Pulisic. We now know after this week that he is a spokesman for the Pulisic squad. my issue, and this we talk about good cop and bad cop, right? You're an easy target because he mentioned, and
He's talking to Landon Donovan. Landon Donovan had talked about the poor choice to not play.
let me not misquote him. This guy, because he tagged you,
Landon
talking
Donovan.
about commitment. Look in the mirror, something else, which I won't say, and call names out. Or are you afraid the next time you want an interview, you'll get rejected? Here's what's happened.
So Pulisic's dad apparently goes on the defensive and then lashes out, tagging Landon Donovan. Tim Howard, former teammate of Landon Donovan, hosts this podcast together with him, is now going to step in. And this thing about the interview, not getting an interview, is the thing that Howard is now going to dispel.
So it's important that we put the story straight. Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie have all been asked to come on our show. They refuse. I mentioned something about Christian Pulisic in the media.
So it's interesting that they've asked those guys to come on, because you would think that if nothing else, guys who've been very highly respected, have played for the national team, have had the kind of international success that these guys have at club teams, you would think that there'd be a good chance that current players would go on the former players show. You would think that.
He responded to me on direct message on Instagram. He sent me
He's back to talking about Pulisic, not the dad, just Christian Pulisic himself.
No, he said, I thought you were out of order. I didn't like what you said. I responded, you may or may not have a point. Give me a call. Here's my number. Let's discuss it. If we disagree, we disagree. Here's my number. So for his dad
And it sounds like that there was no follow-up there.
to come out and attack you and basically say, you're not getting an interview because we're not getting an interview from Christian Pulisic, not because of you, but because of me. And so, again, I'm comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. If Mark Pulisic wants to text me, it's a New York number. His son has it in his direct messages. He can text me.
So that's bad, because what that implies is that the dad is the one who's speaking on behalf of his son, and his son is a grown-ass man. That's one problem, right? You can go back to, if you want, you can go back to LeVar Ball. You can go back to him and going into the draft of Lonzo and being very loud and boisterous, and the thought that maybe he was hurting his son's draft stock, and that he was talking on behalf of his son, taking in and eating up all the oxygen, all that kind of stuff. And then you have, more recently, Deion Sanders and what happened with Shedeur Sanders, and there was the thought that maybe teams didn't draft Shedeur because they didn't want to have to deal with Deion. And now you have Tim Howard saying that he thought it was out of line for Pulisic's dad to tag Donovan and go after Landon Donovan about the gap. So then we allow Landon Donovan then to speak for himself, because Landon Donovan famously did take a gap year, and it didn't work out for him. The gap year that he took was very late in his career, certainly not as early as Pulisic, but it had dire consequences. We actually did talk about those on Wednesday. Remember, Jurgen Klinsmann ultimately chose not to add Landon Donovan to the World Cup roster, and many believe that it was because of that gap year he took. So let's go out to Landon Donovan, and then we're going to kind of wrap up this portion of the show and probably be done. But let's go out to Landon real quick.
Let me get into, first of all, why I'm the right messenger. I also took a break, like some of the players this summer. I know the consequences of that, and we're going to get into that in a minute.
Big word.
So I am the person, probably more than anybody, to speak about this. Okay. When I took my break from soccer, and I'm using that word intentionally, I didn't take a break
Using that word intentionally. Okay, I don't know. Okay.
from the national team. I didn't take a break from the Galaxy.
Got
I
it.
didn't choose club over country or country over club. I took a break from soccer.
Okay, there's your explanation. The view here is that Pulisic is taking a break from the U.S. national team to make sure that his body and his mind are right going into probably AC Milan training in a couple of months, even though Pulisic also says that he's thinking about going into next year's World Cup. Okay. And Donovan took the break from soccer in general, club and country.
And at the time, I didn't know if I was ever going to play again. Okay, I was 31, about to be 32.
Which Pulisic certainly is not.
I'd played over 500 professional games, including over 140 for the national team, 5 Gold Cups, 3 World Cups. I'd had 15 straight seasons of no longer than 4 weeks of a break.
That's a lot of wear and tear on the body.
Okay, I think I deserved to make that decision that time. I was not in my early 20s or my mid 20s deciding not to play for my country. Okay.
I also remember hating that decision at the time and thinking, well, if he's not going to play for the U.S., if he's going to take this break, he can't be on the World Cup team. And maybe I was right, maybe I was wrong. I mean, that World Cup, there was at least one moment that comes to mind where they probably would have been better off having Landon Donovan on the team than not. And his absence did hurt them. And it's probably one of those things that if Klinsmann could go back, maybe he would make the same decision. But there was something about the leadership of Donovan that they missed on that squad. But there you have a difference between a guy who chose to walk away from the sport for a time versus just walk away from the national team. And so Pulisic goes on this quasi damage control tour and says that, well, I wasn't trying to skip the friendlies and the Gold Cup. I was just trying to miss the Gold Cup. I would have gone and played the friendlies. And Pochettino said no. So here's the thing. If you're a U.S. fan, where do you go from here? Do you back the new manager, right, who seems to be saying to the team as a whole, it doesn't matter how important you are, it doesn't matter if you're the captain, it doesn't matter if you've been to a World Cup before, it doesn't matter if you've been to championships at whatever level, at whatever club, none of that matters. What really matters is that if you are committed to the team, you're committed to the team. If you're committed to the Gold Cup, you're committed to those friendlies. If you're committed to those friendlies, you're committed to the Gold Cup. And more importantly, you're committed to the team, and you're committed to U.S. soccer and to the men's national team and representing your country. Pulisic did not seem to agree with that. And again, he said, I don't really understand that decision, but it is what it is. It's not great. It's not great. I can't imagine there's going to be any other updates coming off of that. I think that's the end of that story, but we shall see. Now, listen, it has been about the normal length of a show here. We went just past an hour. We talked about the NBA, the NHL. We had a little bit of very brief Flyers talk in there. We had Sixers talk. We also got into the U.S. men's national team stuff. I think it's a good place to end for the week. I do. I'll be back on Monday. Now, what time? I don't know. Remember, Monday, yours truly, flying in an airplane up to Canada. So Monday's show might be from here in the morning. It might be from Canada in the evening. I have no idea, but what I do know is that it'll be worth checking out. So do me a favor if you haven't done so already. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on Facebook, by all means, hit a lovely like on the video. If you're on X, I don't know, like retweet it or something. If you're listening in the podcast feed on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you can leave a 5-star rating. If you're on Apple Podcasts, you can also leave a 5-star review, and I'll read it on the show. That's all. I think that's all I have. Oh, Cryptic Cowboy says, I'll buy you poutine when you get here. Cryptic Cowboy, do you live in Toronto? Because if so, I would be down for poutine. I've never had actual Canadian poutine before. I've had some version of it here in the States, and it didn't do a lot for me, so, you know. Oh, by the way, D.D. Skinner here with a really good shout. Have a great weekend to all the dads. Happy Father's Day to my dad. I don't think he's watching the show today, but if he is, happy Father's Day. I'm also going to see you on Father's Day, but happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Yeah. Father's Day is always fun. We'll see what Father's Day is like this year. I think it's going to be fun. But if you are a father out there, happy Father's Day to you. If you are a dog dad or something, no. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Father's Day is not your day. No, you're not a dad. You're a pet owner. Thought about going on a rant at the end of the show. I'm not going to. Maybe I will on Monday, but probably not. But if you are a dad, happy Father's Day to all of you on Sunday. And in the meantime, you can go find the show on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube Shorts, clips of the show. They go out consistently thanks to Video Guy Amadeus. So if you can, when those things pop up in your feeds, also make sure you hit a like, maybe follow those accounts as well. A lovely, lovely day. Greg Bondarenko says, thanks for a great Friday show, Russ. Not a father here, and I am okay with it. Greg, good on you. Being a dad stinks. Well, it doesn't, but maybe it does. Who knows? Not everybody is a dad, and that's okay. Some people are, some people aren't. See, now I feel bad. Now I feel like did I hurt anybody's feelings? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings going into a weekend. If you're a dad out there, happy Father's Day. If you're not a dad out there, happy Sunday on Sunday. All right, I'm going to get out of here before I say anything else stupid. I'll talk to each and every one of you on Monday. Until then, this has been the Russ Joy Show, and I've been Russ Joy, but you knew that already because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll talk to you on Monday from here or Canada. Bye now.